Hello friends, very good afternoon. In last 2 or 3 sessions, I discussed in length about the view of the central government, what government wants to deliver with the capex expenditure, and what are the experiences of the past, how such measures work or not. So we have discussed in length. I also discussed for a full day, for I think for at least 2 hours. I devoted my discussion on the physical infrastructure the government focusing on. On the second day, I discussed in length about the social infrastructure, the health and education, and what are the implications, what we are going to see in the future because government has decided to not increase or in some cases to cut down expenditure on some of the major health and education schemes. So I discussed in length, and I also asked you people to ask questions, and some of you have asked. Today, this is the last session on this budget series, and today I'm going to discuss about the transfers from center union to state, okay, and the developments, the key developments, in case of the financial relation between union and state, particularly after the implementation of the GST. I also discuss in brief that what are the demands of the states, and in political economy, the context of the political economy, what will going to happen in the future, okay, in terms of the GST demands, of the different demands of the states, GST councils and all. So before moving to such discussions, the demand of the states, the struggles of the different states in front of the center, about the GST compensation, the sales and all, I will discuss later on. Before moving to that segment, first I want to highlight some of the allocations, okay, that is in the budget. So before moving to any further discussion, first I am going to speak on some of the major highlights that the budget carries about the transfer to the states. So I need not to speak on the center state relations. You people must be aware about, there are different, we study the center state relation in majorly in 3 segments: the administrative relations, the political relations, okay, and the financial relations. So we have different articles on each of such relation. Here we are mainly concerned about the financial relation. So should I repeat the major articles of the Indian Constitution? Although you people must be aware about the financial relation between the center and state. So let me read out very briefly the articles, about the articles, the for that are for the that tells us about, these articles tell us about the financial relations between the union and state. So there is article 264, we all aware about that, article 264 to 293 of part 12, okay, that are generally this part generally deals with the financial relations between union and state. Like there is in the Indian Constitution, there is a federal structure, we all are aware about that, and there is a concept of separation of powers, okay. Particularly in this case, the separation of powers means the power to collect taxes and duties. Okay, who can collect taxes on which item? So there is a clearly, all these things are clearly mentioned in the constitution itself. Okay, so there is a very clarity in this regard. If you will go and read the constitution, the article from 264 to 293, then you will come to know about there is a exact clarity. The power of the, let me read out, the power of the center and states. Okay, here I may use the term center, but there is nothing like center, the union and states. So the power of the union and states to levy taxes has been mentioned. Again, it is mentioned in the schedule. Which schedule it is mentioned? Where are the lists? फर्स्ट शेड्यूल में लिस्ट कहाँ है? टेल मी. सेवंथ शेड्यूल में क्या है? Speak loudly. Okay, that is what I was asking. Okay, and it is also mentioned in Article 246 that there are three lists. Okay, the list one that carries the subject on which the center can make laws. In list two, there are items on which the state can, the different states can make laws. Okay, and there is a concurrent list. Okay, both center and state both have power on this list, items of this list. Okay, then there is a, that is what I discussed, Article 246. We also have Article 246A. Okay, this amendment was brought in by 101st amendment in 2016 to include the concept of the GST, because in the original constitution the kind of dual structure the GST has, it was not in the constitution. So to enable that kind of a structure, the GST structure, the dual structure, this article was brought in. This amendment was brought in 2016, 101st amendment, Article 246A. Then we have Article 256. It is very important article. This article says the compliance with the laws made by Union Parliament. Okay, this article deal with what, it puts certain kind of conditions on the states to, they should comply the laws passed by the Union Parliament. Even this union can give directions to the states. In this article there is Article 258, centers. This Article 258, what this article says broadly, confers and entrust powers to states by center, even the center has executive powers on the subject. If there are some items on which the center has executive power, but center can entrust and confer such powers to the states. That is in the Article 258. Then again there is one amendment in article, the amendment is 269A. That is the 269A. It is about the IGST, the movement of the goods, goods and services, interstate movement. Okay, so IGST was brought in this amendment 269A, this sub article. Then there is Article 270. It is again very important. The levying and distribution of taxes through Finance Commission. As I already discussed when I was discussing 246 article, that there is a schedule 7 and there are lists in this schedule. Okay, so there are items for union, state, and there are some items that are in the concurrent list. Okay, so generally there are 100 items in the union list, and I think there are about 61 items in the state list, and there are 52 items in the concurrent list. So our constitution tells us that about the federal structure and a cooperative federalism, where the state and union, they will work, both have the separation of power in terms of the collection of the taxes, making laws. They have the different list, okay, different items, okay. So there is a very clear distribution of power, and there is a very clarity in terms of the taxes and all. So constitution maintains about the constitution focus on the cooperative federalism. If you will read these articles in detail, you will come to know about the dream of the constitution maker, that they thought about a country where we have a cooperative federalism, where the state and center cooperate, okay, in terms of the tax collection, making laws. So that is why the relation, the financial relations, okay, and how they cooperate. There are some duties levied by the union but collected and appropriated by the states, okay. So it is a cooperation, like stamp duties, bills of exchange, and excise duties on medical and toilet preparations, okay, that are generally not part of the consolidated fund of India but assigned to the states only. Then there is a service tax levied by the union, collected and appropriated by both. That is also cooperative federalism. There are taxes levied as well as collected by the union but assigned to states. There are some tax we know. The sale and purchase of goods in the course of interstate trade or commerce, or the taxes on consignment of goods and service in case of the interstate. And then there is a divisible pool. There are some taxes, that all taxes in the union list, okay, there are some exception under article 268, 268A, 269, okay. Even the surcharge on taxes and duties in article 271, it is exempted from the divisible pool. Then even the cess, any cess levied for specific purpose, particularly in case of the petroleum products, in case of the, even there is a GST, there is a cess in the GST also, okay, on the luxury goods, on the sin items, okay. So these cess are exempted from the part of the divisible pool. That is why, and there is a very long tussle between states and the center, because center is keep increasing the cess and surcharge. Why? Because the center will not have to distribute it to the states, okay. So states are demanding to reduce this cess and surcharge, because they will not have the share in this cess and surcharge, okay. So any specific kind of cess, that is generally not part of the divisible pool. Even in case of the petroleum products, whatever the cess we pay, it is not part of the divisible pool, okay. Even this GST, although GST cess is for the compensation, whatever the GST cess will be collected by the union will transfer it to the states. We will discuss about that. So these are some of the, then this is about the taxation and the transfer. Then there is a separate thing, is grants, okay. The tax can be shared, the tax can be collected by the union, but there are some items on which the union has to transfer the entire tax to the states, okay. And there are some taxes that are part of the divisible pool, but the grants are totally different. So in which article there is a discussion on the grants in constitution? There are discretionary grants, that is the part of article 282. There are discretionary grants, that is the part of article 282. There are some statutory grants. If center union feels that to assist development projects of certain states. If union wants to assist any state government or state governments, union can provide them grants. And there is a special mention of grants in Article 275 for the scheduled areas. So that is, briefly about some of the articles of the Indian Constitution that talks about the federal relations. Okay, I discussed all these articles, in a brief. You people, if you want, you can go and read in the Constitution in detail about the financial relations between union and state. There are administrative relations. Okay, particularly I talked about the financial relations, and I discussed about the some of the articles that are the part of the Indian Constitution and the mechanism by which the center or union levy taxes on different items, about the divisible pools, about the grants. Okay, discretionary grants are part of the 282. Okay, and there are in Constitution itself, under Article 275, the grants are mentioned for the scheduled areas. So now I am coming back to the original discussion, what is in the budget in terms of the financial relations. So there is a one thing, interest free capex, interest free loans. Okay, the center is saying that the states can borrow about $1 trillion rupees. The states can borrow 1 trillion rupees, but they have to spend it on capital expenditure, not as a revenue expenditure. In order to increase their state GDP, to enhance their productivity, the intensity, the capacity of the states of the production, the government, the center allowed the states to borrow, but there are certain conditions on these borrowings. One is the spend all these things on the capital, and it would be interest free. So that is a window of the loan provided by the center, state interest free kind of loans, interest free loans. Okay, and the states can use this in the PM Gati Shakti. That day I discussed about this PM Gati Shakti. Okay, what is the PM Gati Shakti? I discussed in length. The states can use these loans in what? In PM Gati Shakti, projects under PM Gati Shakti. The National Master Plan for Infrastructure Development, states can use these borrowings for what? The National Master Plan for Infrastructure Development, for rural roads, for digitization, for town planning. So what union wants? Union wants that states should generate production capacity, they should generate infrastructure in their respective states. Okay, and union is ready to provide them loans, $1 trillion rupee, the worth of $1 trillion rupee loan, but the states have to spend all these things on via this route: PM Gati Shakti, National Master Plan for Infrastructure Development, rural roads, the digitization schemes. I discussed what kind of digitization government wants to bring in the town planning. There is another thing, states can borrow 4% of their GSDP. GSDP is what? Gross State Domestic Product. As for the at the macroeconomic level, at the country level, we have GDP, Gross Domestic Product. At the state level, we have GSDP, Gross State Domestic Product. So what center is saying, okay, so I am using this term center and union interchangeably. So what center is saying, states can borrow, that is in the budget announcement, states can borrow 4% of their GSDP in fiscal year 23, FY23. But that is above the prescribed limit. Do you know there is a limit on the borrowings of the states? Do you people must be aware about that. There is a cap on the borrowings of the states. So state cannot borrow beyond certain limit. So in this case, union is saying that they can borrow. So they can go above 3.5% of the limit if they bring power sector reforms. If they bring power sector reforms. So that is the condition put by the union, that state can borrow about 4% of their GDP, state GDP. Okay, above the prescribed limit, they can borrow. They can increase their fiscal deficit, but they have to bring in power sector reforms. You people must be aware about this scheme, Uday. It was, for this sector, discom sector, Uday. Why this union wants to, why union is telling states to bring reform in this power sector? Because generally the major deficit of the states are in this sector. The deficits of the states are in this sector, in the power sector. Their state, where the state is running all these electric companies, there is a huge loss. That is why union wants states to bring reform in this sector, about subsidy, about the free electricity and all. So government wants to see some kind of reforms, and that is why government is allowing borrowing more than 3.5% with the condition that you should bring power sector reform. And you people must be aware about the devolution from the union to states. Okay, there are different routes. Okay, the union shares the taxes with the states. Okay, union give grants to the states. Okay, union give special packages to the states. We are aware about that. In case of this tax devolution, from transfer from union to state, this year in the budget the devolution has increased. If you can look at this slide. This is the slide. The first line, see here, devolution of states share in taxes. Look at this slide. In 2021, the actual estimates we have, the devolution was around 59,400,997. Okay, the figure is in crore. In 21-22, the devolution increased. In 22-23, it again increased. However, if you will look at this absolute figure, you will find that the devolution from center to state is increasing. Okay, but actually it is below the limit given by the Finance Commission. If you will look at this absolute figures, you will find that it is increasing. But what 15th Finance Commission recommended, the 15th Finance Commission recommended that there must be 41% of the share must go to the states of the gross tax revenue. Whatever the gross tax revenue is, the 41% should be go to the states. That is what recommended by the Finance Commission. So if you calculate this devolution in terms of the percentage, you will find that it is 29.6%. it is 29.6%. What was recommended by 15th Finance Commission? 41%. So it is under devolution. States are getting less what recommended by the 15th Finance Commission. Even during the entire period of the 14th Finance Commission, the percentage of in this segment, the state's share in taxes was around 34 to 35% in the period of the 14th Finance Commission. But now it is around 29.6%, and that is way below what 15th Finance Commission recommended. So where is the problem? The problem is that union wants to give funds to the states via centrally sponsored schemes. तिवारी जी आ रहा है समझ में? Union wants to give funds to the state via which route? Centrally sponsored schemes. Okay, that is why because of the political economy, union wants its own name. Everybody, if you will look at the schemes, you will find there is a PM Kisan, PM Awas. So they wants to give message to the public that it is whatever you are getting, the center is giving it to you. They wants to give a message. Okay, not this government. Even earlier also, you will find that the focus was the focus was on grants. Okay, via which route? The route of the centrally sponsored scheme. There are some schemes that are sponsored by the centers, although some of the cost of such schemes bear by the states also, like MG Narega. Okay, a major fund allocation is done by the center, but the state also bear cost under MG Narega. So over a period of time, what we are witnessing, that the focus of the center is on the centrally sponsored schemes. Okay, particularly when we see that there is a full majority government. When there were the governments with certain kind of the coalition partners, they didn't have that much focus on centrally sponsored schemes, because many different parties were part of their government. But now the government is in the full majority. So government wants to, in the political economy, the structure of the political structure of the country matters a lot when it comes to the financial relations. So what states are saying, even the Finance Commission recommended that states should get 41% of the total taxes. 41% of the gross total tax revenue, the states should get around 41%. Okay, but currently how much they are getting? 29.6%. Okay, so that is the underpayment. Even in case of the 14th Finance Commission, during the entire period of the 14th Finance Commission, the total share was around 34 or 35%. So over a period of time, center is focusing on centrally sponsored schemes like MG Nareka, PM Awas Yojana, Jal Jeevan Yojana. So there are many centrally sponsored schemes, CSS. There are many centrally sponsored schemes, and center is giving funds via this route. You can look at this second chart. This is the government's document, the budget document. These slides are not prepared by me. That is the budget, the summary of the budget provided by the government. You can look at the schemes related and other transfers. The composition of transfers to states and union territories in crore. You will find the devolution is that earlier it was 59, then it is increased. In the BE it is increased to around 65,000, and in BE 22-23 it is increased to 81 1000 crore rupees. But in case of there is a rise in case of the schemes related fund transfer. Okay. There are some other grants, as I discussed, the Finance Commission grants. Okay. So in case of the Finance Commission grants, the trends are, you can look at the screen. Okay. As there is no growth in the ICDS scheme, the fund allocation, whatever the fund allocation, you will find there are outlay on major schemes. If you will read this budget document in detail, you will find that there is no growth in the ICDS. Okay. What is ICDS? Integrated. Okay. So there is no growth in that scheme. What happened during this pandemic? The revenue of the revenue collection of the states, okay, it came down gradually during the pandemic, because there were no activities. There were, lockdown, series of lockdowns. We witnessed all these things. So in this period, the income of the states that went down gradually. Okay. So what center suggested to the states, that states can borrow. Okay. So with this mechanism, the revenue deficits of the states increased in last 2-3 years. Okay. That is another thing. There is one more scheme launched by the government, and that is in the budget, the PM dash DEV for the development. Okay. NE for Northeast. PM development scheme hai ye. It is for the Northeast development, to support infrastructure and social development of the Northeast. So that is the scheme launched by the government. I am just discussing what is in the budget. In last so many years, generally it has been noticed that the fiscal deficit of the states are below what was recommended. Okay, under the FRL. What is FRL? FRL. Just search it on Google. Fiscal responsibility legislation. Okay. So under this FRL, the states cannot, increase their deficit more than 3% of their GSDP. It has been noticed for all the years since 2005-6. Since 2005-6, for all the years, states, they have maintained this FRL limit. States have maintained this FRL limit since 2005. But there are some exceptions. When I am saying that since 2005-6, there are some exceptions. One exception was in 2009-10, because of the financial crisis. In order to fight financial crisis, states, they have borrowed a lot, and they have breached the FRL limit in 2009-10. In 2015-16 and 2016-17, for these two successive years, the states, they have breached the FRL limit. Why? That time this scheme was launched, the Ujjwal Discom assurance. Okay. To government said to the states that bring power sector reforms and all. At that time, the Ujjwal, when this scheme came in the picture, Ujjwal Discom assurance, that time the fiscal deficit was above the FRL. Again, in 2020-21 because of the pandemic. The fiscal deficits of the states are increased. Okay, it is above the FRL because of the pandemic. Okay, got it? Now come to the GST. So we all know about the battle between states and union, okay, and it is not new. Since the introduction of when the concept of GST was introduced first time, it came in the discussion, not introduced. The first time it was discussed, so all the states they have opposed the concept of the GST. Why the states they have opposed the concept of the GST? Why? Why? It was against the spirit of the cooperative federalism. Okay. In more simple terms, if you want to tell me.
It hinders the tax collection power of states.
Exactly. Nobody wants to give their own power to anybody else. Okay. State wanted the tax collection power with them. Okay. So they didn't want. They thought that why we should give our powers to levy taxes, to collect taxes, to decide the rates according to their own will. Why we should give it to the union government? Okay, so states were opposing. There were so many concerns, like a particular state, if the tax collection in the Karnataka was very high, so they, for example, so they might have thought that if we will give the power to the union, then we will not get what we are currently getting. Okay, so there were a long battle between union and states. Finally, it was a very historic move. In 2017, consensus was built. Okay, and the GST was introduced in the month of July 2017. Okay, the GST was implemented. So there is a history between, there is a fight between the states and the union about the GST, and a long negotiation went on between the states and union. Okay, and finally, in case of the compensation, it was decided that center union will compensate to the states the whatever will be the loss of the states in terms of the taxes. Suppose currently at that time in 2016, if the states particularly one state was able to collect a 500 rupee taxes, okay, and after the GST, from the divisible pool, the state will get around 400 rupees. Okay, so the 100 rupee will be compensated by the union. Okay, so from where the union will collect this compensation? Okay, so center said we are not going to pay this from our resources, we will levy a different cess, the compensation cess under GST structure, and whatever the cess we will collect, we will transfer it to the states. So it was a mechanism. Okay, but what happened for 2017-18 and 2018-19? For the 2017-18 and for year 2018, in the initial 2 years of the launching of the GST, for 2 years the mechanism was good. Okay, whatever the cess collected by the union transferred it to the states. So there were no any controversy. But after that, there is a slowdown in the economic activity, particularly when the pandemic hit us. Okay, so when there is a slowdown in the economic activity, so obviously the tax collection of the center will be less. Okay, the center had less amount of money in hand, and center couldn't transfer the amount to the states. So whatever before the implementation of the GST, okay, whatever the consensus, whatever the consultations took place between states and union, okay, so union couldn't fulfill the promise that whatever loss you are going to bear, we will compensate, the union will compensate, and union will compensate it through the cess, the mechanism of the cess. But the cess collection was very less. The cess collection was very less. And but why, by what amount it was very less? The actual requirement was around 3 lakh crore rupees. The actual requirement, the actual compensation amount was around 3 lakh crore rupees. But the union government collected only 70,000 crore rupees. The actual requirement was to compensate states. The actual requirement was around 3 lakh crore rupees. But the center collected through the cess only 70,000 crore rupees. Okay, so there were very big gaps in year 1920 and later on also. And then there were a lots of struggle between the states, where keep asking union to give our compensation because the pandemic hit us. We have to spend a lot on the different health activities, we have to support the population. Many state governments run the transfer program, the free ration, distribution of free ration and all. So to run all these activities, we have to spend a lot. Kindly give our compensation. So what the union government, not the union government, the GST council came up with a different kind of idea. The idea was that the union government will take loan from the market. So firstly, union government took loan of worth rupees 1,10,000 crore rupee. Union government took loan from the market and provided it to the state governments. It was decided in the 43rd GST Council meeting. But this amount was again not sufficient amount, okay, because the actual requirement was around 3 lakh crore rupees. So 70,000 crore rupees were collected by the center with the mechanism of cess. The remaining amount, union wanted to pay the states with this mechanism. It was very crucial, very complex mechanism. It is not like that government borrowed from the market and given to the states. Okay, there were some accounting involved in this case, that it was recorded in the budget of the state governments. Okay, it was part of the deficit of the state governments. Okay, so I am not going on all these details. Again, government borrowed 1,59,000 crore rupees as a loan, and it given to the states. Next year also, it is in the form of the loan. The state government can take loan, okay, but state governments will not have to pay back the principal amount, or neither the principal amount nor the interest payment. Okay, so there were no liability on the states, although it was in the form of the loan, but there were no liability on the states. Okay, however, it was recorded in the budget of the states. All these borrowings were reflected in the deficit of the states. Okay, although it was not actually deficit, but just to bring transparency on the accountancy, it was written as a deficit in the state government's document. So it would be easier for the CAG to to maintain accounts of the state, to check accounts of the states. Okay, so just to bring certain kind of transparency and parity between states. Okay, it was part of the deficit of the states, but there were no liability on the states. Okay, during this pandemic, you can note down this. Under Atmanirbhar Bharat, 11,912 crore rupee package. It was a loan package. Okay, generally whatever announcements were made during pandemic, all such announcements were in the form of the loan. So it was also a loan to the states. Sorry, it was optional that states can borrow under this package 11,912 crore to speed up the infrastructure development in the states. So why the idea of GST was, brought in? Anybody wants to tell me what was the logic behind the GST? What was the logic behind the GST? Why? Because in the constitution, as in the beginning I discussed about some of the articles of the constitution, that the constitution tells us about a federal structure, about the cooperative federalism. Okay, then there is a clear separation of powers about the items, on which government can make laws. I discussed in length about the union list, state list, concurrent list. So there is a clear separation. Who will collect tax on which item, and whether such taxes will be distributed among states or not. So everything is very clear. Who will collect tax? Okay, whether such taxes should be distributed or not. So all these things are in detail in the constitution. So why the policymakers, the politicians wanted to bring in this GST regime? What was the logic? If, for example, if you people will go in the interview and somebody interviewer will ask, what was the logic behind the GST? What was the key argument or key arguments behind the GST? बोलिए please. Anybody, you can give wrong answers. There is no need to give bookish answers and all. Whatever you know, you can tell. To bring uniformity. Okay, कि इतनी, there are multiple taxes. Okay, there are multiple organizations that collect taxes. Okay, so just to bring uniformity, a single tax structure in the country, they wanted to bring in this GST reforms. What else? The second was,
Since there were so many taxes at every level of the items, so GST was implemented just to subsume all these indirect taxes. That would be one reason.
in brief, we can say they wanted to bring in economic efficiency, isn't it? It was the main argument, because इतने सारे टैक्सेस हैं, उसकी कोई ट्रांसपेरेंसी भी नहीं है, कौन कितना दे रहा है, टैक्स ऑन टैक्सेस है, काफ़ी मुश्किल है. ओके, they wanted to bring in economic efficiency. Okay, that is why the states, they agreed upon to give their power to the state, to the union. Okay, they were ready to compensate their powers just to bring in economic efficiency in the country, in their states. If there will be more economic efficiency, a simplified tax structure, if simplified tax structure will be there, so then we will improve our economic outputs. Okay, and there will be more consumption. Okay, if the structure of the tax collection, it would again be simplified, because the tax officers will know in clear terms, what is the share of the state, what is the share of the union, and there will be electronic mechanism and all. So more and more people will come in the GST net. Okay, more informal setups will come in the GST net. Ultimately it will increase a simplified structure, because if the structure is simplified, for example, I am a producer, if I will find the structure, the tax collection mechanism is very difficult, so I will think छोड़ दो इसको, बहुत tough है. But if I will find that it is very less, there are not multiple rates, and the filing system is very easy, so I may think that I should include, I should register myself under this structure. Okay, so all these kind of arguments were made. But what happened after the implementation? First, it was argued that it is going to be one nation, one tax structure, but actually there is multiple slabs in this regime, GST regime. So what was promised? One tax, one nation, but there are multiple slabs. However, when they were bringing this GST, they promised that gradually we will reduce the slabs. There will be a single tax. Okay, but it is still 5 or 6 years that whatever they promised, they didn't bring in. In between 2017-18, when this structure was brought in, the GST regime was brought in. Okay, at that time you people must have heard about the complications in terms of the e-way bills, and there were some down in the internet connection, and all these kind of technical glitches were there. That time people were suffering. Many business outlets, they suffered a lot because of this faulty design of, particularly of the digital infrastructure was not sufficient to deal with such a huge amount of the filing. So you must have heard about that. So there were a lot of kind of difficulties in terms of the GST. An important aspect, as she rightly said, that our constitution tells us about the cooperative federalism, where state and union cooperate in the functioning of the different activities. Okay, not only these financial relations, other relations also, but today we are only concerned about the financial relations. There are administrative relations, there are political relations between union and states, but I am talking about the financial relations. So constitution tells us about a cooperative federalism, where there must be some kind of cooperation between states and unions, where states have say in the decision making process. They have their own powers. If we look of the American states, United States Constitution, in the United States there is a lot of power for the states. Okay, the states of the America, they are more powerful than the Indian state. They have more power. Okay, but in India also, in the different articles of the Indian Constitution, it is written that the states have power to make laws, to collect taxes, to levy taxes, to decide the rates of the taxes. Okay, so but GST was brought in, so it was actually a killing of the cooperative federalism. Okay, it was the argument against the GST, but the people who were involved in the GST, they said that it is not the it is not the end of the cooperative federalism, it is the beginning of the competitive federalism. Okay, and by which mechanism? That there will be a GST council. Okay, see, all the states, the finance ministers and their officials of the state, they will sit in the GST council. Okay, so actually they are not going to lose their powers. They will have say in the decision making process about the items on which the rates and all these things. So they argued, the people who were involved in the GST, they argued that states are not going to lose their power. They will be in the GST council. they will have opinions, they will have options, they will be voting in all kind of mechanism. But what happened actually, okay, particularly after the pandemic, so there are less meetings of the GST councils, okay, many GST council meetings are suspended. Isn't it against the cooperative federalism? Okay, there are delay in meetings, there are delay in meetings. The principle of consultation is bypassed many times. If you will read newspapers, you will come to know the demand of the states, what states are saying, their opinion about different trades and all. So there are less consultation. So from federal structure to we are moving towards what structure? No. By this faulty implementation of the GST, from federal structure to what structure we are moving? Unitary structure. Okay. Although they argued that no, you are not going to lose your powers. Okay. We will maintain the cooperative federalism. Okay. We will have competitive federalism and all. They argued in favor of GST. These kind of the arguments were there, but after the implementation 4, 5 or 6 years of the GST, what we are looking that first promise was not made about the CS compensation. Okay, as I said, the states were keep asking about their compensation, give us our compensation back. So union provided them compensation in the form of the loan. Even currently all the major states, the states that are ruled by the opposition parties, they are asking give us compensation directly, not in the form of the loan. Okay, back to back, there are back to back loans. Don't give us compensation in the form of loan, give it direct, give us directly. So they are demanding that give our compensation back. So this was the promise made by the union that we will compensate you, but the center is not giving them their compensation, particularly after the pandemic. Earlier the mechanism was only for 5 years. Okay, that 5-year period is going to be end in this June 22. The compensation mechanism was only for 5 years. When the GST was brought in the month of the July 2017, it is written in the act that for the next 5 years this union will compensate to the states. Their loss in the tax collection will be compensated by the union government for the next 5 years. Okay, so that compensation period is going to be end in the month of the this year only, I think in the June 22. Okay, so now states are asking that because of the pandemic, we are badly hit by the pandemic. There is as I discussed, there is a downfall in the revenue. So kindly increase this compensation period at least for 2026. Okay, even in the last or before that, in the meeting of the GST council, it was voted by the majority of the states that the compensation period should be increased to 2026. And I don't know what is the decision of the union government, but union government is likely to increase this period. I don't know whether maybe they actually they may have made the decision. I am not aware about that, but it is the demand of the states that kindly increase. Not they might not have used this word kindly, that increase this limit, the compensation period up to 26, because we are badly hit by the pandemic. And if the tax collection of the center is less, obviously it means that the transfer is going to be less, isn't it? Okay, so because of the pandemic last year, not in the current year, the tax collections are good. The last year the tax collection were very less. Okay, so two kind of setback I discussed in my last class. The two kind of setback, faced by the union government. First, the tax collections were very less. I discussed in length. They couldn't meet their disinvestment target. The union government, always, day before yesterday I discussed that, I don't know where it is written. Yes, that in fiscal year 20, the target of the disinvestment was around 1 lakh 5,000 crore, but the actual collection was around 50,000 crore rupee. Then in 21, the target was 2,10,000 crore rupee. Don't write it, but the actual collection was around 32,000 crore rupee. Then in year 22, for FY22, the target was 1,75,000 crore rupee, but the actual, there is no data of the actual. So currently, government learned from the past experience, and the current target of the disinvestment is the 65,000 crore rupee. Okay, and mainly government is focusing on the LIC, Shipping Corporation of India, and the BPCL. Okay, so in last 2-3 years, from 2015-16, whatever the targets were made by the union government about the disinvestment, union government couldn't collect that much amount whatever they targeted. The second, there were reduction in the tax collections. Okay, so that why whatever the promises were made by the union government, they couldn't fulfill all these targets. So that is number one. So all these promises were in terms of the finance, in terms of the money, but there were some more promises that were not in terms of the money, but in terms of the decision making, in terms of the opinion. Okay, such targets, such promises were like, there will be a council and there will be a proper functioning of the council. I think it is written in the act itself, that about the quorum, about the timing of the, that in each 4 months or 6 months there will be meeting of the GST council, if you will read. But now what we are what we are witnessing, there are delays in the meetings. Okay, unanimously all the rates, all the decisions are taken by the union unanimously without any consultation. Okay, the consultation is very important. If you are taking power from the states, the power of the collection, imposition of the taxes, at least consult with them, so they will feel that we have certain power in this federal structure. Okay, but there are very less consultation. Even there are incidences where the union government announced about the GST announcement of the union governments were on Twitter. On Twitter, government announced about the GST collections and other rates and all these things. So without any consultation, without any meetings, okay, the government announced many things. Okay, so it is the kind of death of the federal structure, particularly the cooperative federal structure. There are reports that GST, all the decision is taken by the GST implementation committee. Okay, the GST implementation committees keep implementing different decisions without the consultation of the GST council. So there are two committees, GST council and GST implementation committee. GST implementation committees keep implementing different decisions of the union government without the consultation of the GST council. Okay, so there are less power for the states. Okay, so this type of questions are repeatedly asked by the different exam authorities, the state commissions, the public service commissions, about the balance between cooperative and competitive federalism. It was directly asked the negative aspects of the GST in terms of the cooperative federalism. Okay, so whatever I am teaching, I am discussing, it is not in the air. Such types of the questions repeatedly have been asked by the different exam authorities. Okay, in mock interviews, even I asked the students about the GST and its negative impact. So very few students were able to answer this question. Even one interviewer, he is working in the GST department, okay, of the state government. So he asked this question, that the negative impact of the GST in terms of the cooperative federalism. So the candidate was, she was very blank on this question. So that is why today I discussed in length about the cooperative federalism, the negative impact of the GST, and all these points are, it is a demand of the states. It is not from my side. Okay, if you will read the demand of the state, I didn't, discuss in detail about the political economy, the opposition parties, the party who is in the majority. So what are the implications of such political structure if the party is in the if the government of the, if the government is have kind of coalition with the different parties, if the government enjoying its own majority. So I didn't discuss in length all these things. Okay, but such types of the questions are repeatedly asked by the UPSC. Okay, even in interviews there are tendencies that they are asking such critical questions. Okay, so now I am closing this budget discussion today. I just want to ask, I just want to answer your questions. Whatever I discussed in last 3-4 days, kindly ask some questions. Okay, so today I came here with the intention that I will discuss only for 30 minutes, and for the rest of the time I will take questions. Okay, but the discussion was lengthy. No issue, I am here for next 10 or 15 minutes. If you want to ask some question, then kindly ask. पूछिए. Not out of today's discussion, whatever I discussed about the budget in last 3 or 4 training sessions, kindly ask questions. कुछ भी पूछिए आप. Generally भी, if it is not related to budget, you can ask me anything. It is coming in your mind. Yes, exactly. No, we evolve. What is your good name? PhD, we evolve over a period of time. So what was the total allocation and what was the recommended by the 12th Finance Commission? So it was a different in case of the 13th Finance Commission. और जब तक 13th Finance Commission आया, हम इवॉल्व हुए. हम मतलब यूनियन इवॉल्व हुई और यूनियन ने और ज़्यादा बातें मानना चालू की फाइनेंस कमीशन की. फिर 14th आया. आप देखेंगे 14th के केस में रिकमेंडेशन भी ज़्यादा थी और 14th जो उसकी ग्रॉस रेवेन्यू की रिकमेंडेशन भी ज़्यादा थी और 14th की जो रिकमेंडेशन स्टेट ने मानी भी बहुत. ठीक है, तो हम जो 10th फाइनेंस कमीशन था, फिर 11th आया, फिर 12th आया, फिर 13th आया, फिर 14th आया, तो ग्रेजुअली यूनियन इवॉल्व होता गया. वो ज़्यादा से ज़्यादा जो है मानने लगा. लेकिन एकदम इस तरह के कुछ क्राइसिस आ गए हैं 15th जब से आया है. आप देखेंगे फिर वो अल नीनो का साल रहा, फिर डिमोनेटाइजेशन रहा, फिर जैसे ही जीएसटी आया, जीएसटी जब पहली बार आया तो 97,000 करोड़ रुपए का टैक्स कलेक्शन का लॉस हुआ. ठीक है, फिर उसके बाद इकोनॉमिक डाउनफॉल आया. आपने देखा होगा कि जो है 19 के बाद फिर से हमारी जीडीपी कम, इवन पेंडेमिक के पहले जीडीपी की ग्रोथ केवल 4.2% थी. पेंडेमिक तो बाद आया, जहाँ तक मुझे याद है पेंडेमिक तो बाद में आया. उसके पहले ही अगर आप क्वार्टर टू क्वार्टर ग्रोथ रेट देखें जीडीपी की पेंडेमिक के पहले, तो कोई अच्छी पिक्चर नहीं थी. तो एक वो इकोनॉमिक डाउनफॉल भी आया और फिर पेंडेमिक ने तो बिल्कुल ही कर दिया. तो अगर गवर्नमेंट की इच्छा, हमें नहीं पता गवर्नमेंट की क्या इच्छा है, ना ही हम उन्हें वो कर रहे हैं, जो पॉलिसी मेकिंग में या फाइनेंस मिनिस्टर वगैरह वो मैथ्स जानते हैं कितना आता है कितना नहीं, अंदर के जो लोग हैं. लेकिन शायद गवर्नमेंट की इच्छा रही भी हो कि अपनी पिछली सरकारों के पाथ को फॉलो करें, लेकिन क्राइसिस इतना आया कि जो है वो फुलफिल नहीं कर पाए। ये तो हो गया एक पॉजिटिव आंसर। एक क्रिटिकली जो मैंने बात अपनी डिस्कशन में आई डिस्कस्ड कि धीरे धीरे सरकारों की ये मंशा है कि वो सेंट्रली स्पॉन्सर्ड स्कीम के थ्रू फंड ज़्यादा दें, क्योंकि उसमें उसका नाम होता है, ख़ासतौर से अगर गवर्नमेंट फुल मेजॉरिटी की है। ये आप देखेंगे, आर्टिकल्स पढ़ेंगे, मैंने भी कहीं पढ़ा होगा कि रिसर्च पेपर्स आप पढ़ेंगे जो पॉलिटिकल इकोनॉमी के ऊपर, आप देखेंगे यूनियन अगर मेजॉरिटी में है सेंटर, तो उसकी ज़्यादा से ज़्यादा इच्छा ये है कि वो अपने नाम से स्कीम चले और उससे पैसा जाए, ताकि एंड वोटर को लगे कि हाँ ये इन्होंने किया। बहुत क्लैरिटी चाहते हैं वो, इसलिए वो डिविजिबल पुल से पैसा ना देते हुए वो सेंट्रली स्पॉन्सर्ड स्कीम से, वो भी अपनी पसंद की स्कीम में जो उन्होंने खुद लॉन्च की उसके थ्रू वो पैसा देना चाहते। सारी सरकारें ऐसा करती थीं, ये सरकार भी ऐसा कर रही है, लेकिन पहले जो है मिली जुली सरकार होती थी तो उसमें स्टेट्स की भी कई पार्टीज़ का समर्थन होता था, तो वहाँ ये कंसर्न थोड़ा कम था कि हमारा नाम हो किसी का नाम ना हो। लेकिन अब चूँकि फुल मेजॉरिटी है तो ये कंसर्न बढ़ गए। तो धीरे धीरे जो है वो आपने सही, आपका स्टेटमेंट है कि ऐसे तो धीरे धीरे फाइनेंस कमीशन भी अपना सिग्निफिकेंस खो देगा। वो स्टेटमेंट आपका सही है जी।
केंद्र के बेटे सेंट्रल बेटे उन्हीं से संबंधित रहती है या फिर कॉन्करेंट से संबंधित रहती है। जो राज्य कुछ चीजें बेटे हैं और बहुत सारे राज्य की अपनी जनता की ज़्यादा अच्छी तरीके से समझते हैं क्या करनी पड़ती है, तो कोई से इम्प्लीमेंट ये नहीं होगा कि सेंट्रल किस तरीके से हमें देखने नहीं पड़ती है।
थोड़ा सा मेरी राय आपसे अलग है, उल्टी है। जो सेंटर की अधिकतर स्कीम्स हैं वो स्टेट सब्जेक्ट पे हैं। आप अगर देखेंगे जैसे हेल्थ और एजुकेशन, ये दो मेजर स्टेट के सब्जेक्ट हैं, लेकिन सेंटर की जो स्कीम होती है वो इसके ऊपर लाई जाती है। ठीक है, कंकरेंट आइटम्स पे भी हैं, ठीक है, जो बाद में चीज़ें कंकरेंट लिस्ट में शामिल कर दी गई, पहले नहीं थी, उस पर भी लाई जाती हैं। एक तो ये हो गया। दूसरा आपका क्वेश्चन क्या था? हाँ, मुझे लगता है कि जो है वो सारे स्टेट पर आपकी बात लागू नहीं होती। सारे स्टेट अभी तक एक्सपीरियंस पे ही हम बोलते हैं, फ्यूचर का तो नहीं। जो दूसरे कुछ स्टेट से ही हैं जिन्होंने अपनी समस्याओं को बेहतर तरीके से समझा, कुछ स्टेट्स ऐसे हैं जिन्होंने अपनी समस्याओं को बेहतर तरीके से नहीं समझा। इसलिए मैंने अपने लास्ट लेक्चर में कहा था, इसलिए सेंटर को बीच में आना चाहिए। तो उससे मैं थोड़ा सा आपसे डिसएग्री हूँ। कुछ स्टेट्स हैं, खासतौर से सदर्न स्टेट्स, जिन्होंने अपनी समस्याओं को अच्छे से समझा, और उनके केस में ये है कि अगर उनको पावर और दिए जाएं तो वो बहुत अच्छा करके दिखाएंगे। कुछ स्टेट्स ऐसे हैं जिनके लिए ये कुछ चीज़ें प्रायोरिटी ही नहीं रही। अगर नेशनल रूरल हेल्थ मिशन या अर्बन हेल्थ मिशन या JNNURM या उसके बाद इस सरकार ये योजनाएं नहीं आई होती तो कुछ स्टेट्स की हालत तो बहुत बुरी होती। ये मैंने अपने लास्ट लेक्चर में डिस्कस किया था, जब मैं हेल्थ पे डिस्कस कर रहा था कि क्यों यूनियन को हेल्थ पे स्पेंड करना चाहिए। और ख़ास तौर से जब पॉलिटिक्स बहुत कॉम्पिटिटिव हो गई है कि अगर एक पार्टी ने कहा कि हम कर्ज माफ़ी करेंगे, दूसरी पार्टी ने कहा कि हम लैपटॉप बांटेंगे, तो अब ये बहुत कॉम्पिटिटिव हो गई है। सारी पार्टी अगर वो मार्केट में बिलीव करती है या सोशलिज्म में बिलीव करती है, इररिस्पेक्टिव ऑफ द फैक्ट दोनों को अनाउंसमेंट करनी है। तो उनके लिए ये हेल्थ, एजुकेशन और इस तरह की जो समस्याएं आप बता रही वो प्रायोरिटी में नहीं आएगी, क्योंकि उनका पूरा जो फाइनेंस उसमें चला जाएगा इस तरह की चीज़ों में। तो आज के दौर में तो और मुश्किल हो गया है ना। इसलिए सेंटर का एक्सपेंडिचर बहुत ज़रूरी है इस पॉलिटिकल स्ट्रक्चर में। और ये मेरा स्टेटमेंट नॉर्थ के लिए ज़्यादा, और मध्य के जो हमारे मध्य प्रदेश, छत्तीसगढ़ जो हिंदी भाषी और दूसरे राज्य हैं, इनके लिए ज़्यादा एप्लीकेबल है ये स्टेटमेंट। ठीक है, तो ये मेरा आंसर। क्वेश्चन
सर, बजट के अंदर एक पॉइंट था मेंशन, वो इसमें समझ नहीं आया।
प्लीज।
एम्स टू लोअर द वाइंडिंग अप ऑफ द कंपनीज to 6 months from 2 years currently.
I didn't get you. Please read it again.
Aims to lower the winding up of companies to 6 months from 2 years currently.
Winding of the.
Yes, sir. Winding up.
आई डोंट नो, ये मैंने नहीं पढ़ा चूंकि, इसलिए मैं नहीं कमेंट करूंगा। मुझे लगता है ये इंसॉल्वेंसी या बैंकरप्सी के अंदर वाली कोई बात है। पूछिए, सब एक एक क्वेश्चन पूछो, चलो। हाँ,
question arises कि why government has more immense focus towards this physical infrastructure thing, and why government is not focusing over social infrastructure?
because every government wants to deliver on the data. That is the tendency, particularly in the post reform period. We have seen the growing importance of the GDP data. Okay, we can look at all the governments even after 10 years from today onwards. Even today, if we compare the performance of any government, we majorly look on two statistics. One is the GDP and the second on the employment figures. that कि उस गवर्नमेंट ने इतना किया, उसके टाइम इतनी थी, डॉक्टर मनमोहन सिंह के समय इतनी थी, इस गवर्नमेंट के समय इतनी। जनरली हम जीडीपी पे सारा डिस्कशन फोकस करते हैं, जो कि गलत है। तो गवर्नमेंट की भी जो एडवाइज़र रहे हैं, हम उनको पढ़ें तो वो सभी का फोकस ये है कि जैसे भी है जीडीपी और एम्प्लॉयमेंट के नंबर को बढ़ाया जाए। ऐसा उन लोगों ने उन्हें एडवाइस किया होगा, गवर्नमेंट को किया है। अगर आप देखें, इंटरव्यूज़ पढ़ें चीफ इकोनॉमिक एडवाइज़र के या इकोनॉमिक एडवाइजरी काउंसिल के जो चेयरमैन हैं, या आप 2-3 साल का इकोनॉमिक सर्वे भी पढ़ेंगे, आप पाएंगे उन्होंने उन्हें सरकार को ये एडवाइस दी है कि आप जो है कैपिटल एक्सपेंडिचर कीजिए, क्योंकि इससे जो है कंस्ट्रक्शन में जॉब्स आती हैं। देखो, इसका एक नेगेटिव पार्ट ये है, आप जितने भी ब्रिज बनवाते हो, रोड्स बनवाते हो, इस तरह की सारी जॉब जो है वो लो स्किल जॉब्स होती हैं। जो कंस्ट्रक्शन वर्कर होता है इंडिया में, जितने भी लोग, आपको ही बताने की ज़रूरत नहीं, जितने भी लोगों ने एग्रीकल्चर छोड़ी है वो सभी लोग कंस्ट्रक्शन वर्कर ही बने हैं। ठीक है, अगर आप किसी दिन आप कहेंगे, मैं आपको एम्प्लॉयमेंट का डेटा, मेरा खुद का कैलकुलेशन है, मैं बताऊंगा कि एग्रीकल्चर से जो आउट मोबिलिटी, से हम आउट फार्म मोबिलिटी कहते हैं, वो कंस्ट्रक्शन सेक्टर में आती है ना। 20-1 करोड़ लोग उसमें, या ज़्यादा बता रहा हूँ मैं, इतने करोड़ों में लोग जो है कंस्ट्रक्शन सेक्टर में काम करते हैं। तो गवर्नमेंट को ये लगा कि हम अगर कंस्ट्रक्शन, रोड, हाईवेज, ब्रिज अगर बनवाएंगे तो इसमें जॉब हाथों हाथ बढ़ती है। एक गवर्नमेंट की ये भी थी कि इसमें जो है, मैंने जैसे समझाया, मल्टीप्लायर इफेक्ट ज़्यादा होता है। अगर आपने रोड्स, ब्रिज ये बनवाए तो फिर सीमेंट इंडस्ट्री भी चलेगी, फिर उसमें एम्प्लॉयमेंट बढ़ेगा, फिर आपकी वो बढ़ेगी, आपकी स्टील की इंडस्ट्री और जितनी भी ऑक्सिलरी इंडस्ट्रीज़ हैं कंस्ट्रक्शन के आसपास, वो बढ़ेगी और उससे जो है इकोनॉमी में फिर से डिमांड पॉपअप करेगी। ये आर्ग्यूमेंट सरकार ने दी, मैंने इसके नेगेटिव भी बताए थे। इससे क्या होगा, हाथों हाथ जीडीपी भी सुधरेगी और एम्प्लॉयमेंट का डेटा भी सुधरेगा। जितने गवर्नमेंट के क्रिटिसिज्म है कि 42 ईयर्स की सबसे हाई अनएम्प्लॉयमेंट है, तो गवर्नमेंट चाहती है उस स्टैटिस्टिक्स को सुधारना। लॉन्ग टर्म में ये है कि हेल्थ, सोशल इंफ्रा और एजुकेशन अगर आप ये दोगे तो ही लॉन्ग टर्म में आप ग्रो करोगे। जो सिंगापुर है, हांगकांग है, ईस्ट एशियन कंट्रीज़ जिसे हम कहते हैं, जो हमें, जो उसको ईस्ट एशियन टाइगर्स जिन्हें हम कहते हैं, उनका आप एक्सपीरियंस देखें, या आप सिंगापुर का एक्सपीरियंस देखें, आप स्कैंडिनेवियन कंट्रीज़ का एक्सपीरियंस देखें, आप जापान का एक्सपीरियंस देखें, जिन लोगों ने भी प्राइमरी हेल्थ और प्राइमरी एजुकेशन पे खर्च किया है, वही लोग लॉन्ग टर्म में आगे निकले हैं। क्योंकि आपको एक इनोवेटिव इकोनॉमी बनानी है तो आपकी हेल्थ अच्छी होनी चाहिए, और एजुकेशन का मतलब स्किल ओरिएंटेड एजुकेशन ये होनी चाहिए। सारी दुनिया का ये एक्सपीरियंस है, जहाँ जहाँ पर भी हेल्थ और एजुकेशन पे एक्सपेंडिचर हुआ है, वो कंट्री ने 20-20 साल की ग्रोथ मेंटेन की है, 1-2 साल की नहीं। ये जो फिज़िकल इंफ्रा है, ये अच्छी चीज़ है। वैसे मीडियम टर्म में ये अच्छा है, शॉर्ट और मीडियम टर्म में, कि आपको एक इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर बनेगा, कैपेसिटी बिल्डिंग होगी। तो ये नहीं है कि कैपिटल को घटाना चाहिए, कैपिटल ठीक है, लेकिन सोशल और हेल्थ और एजुकेशन को तो इग्नोर किया ही नहीं जा सकता। इसके तो इफ़ और बट भी नहीं है, इसके तो ना फेवर में कोई, इसके अगेंस्ट में कोई आर्गुमेंट है ही नहीं। अगर आप किसी भी ठीक ठाक इकोनॉमिस्ट से पूछेंगे कि हेल्थ और एजुकेशन पे, इवन जो एडम स्मिथ था, जो लेजर का जो सिद्धांत था कि गवर्नमेंट का कोई इंटरवेंशन नहीं होना चाहिए, उसने भी इन 4-5 चीज़ों को तो माना ही था। एक कि बॉर्डर पे सिक्योरिटी तो गवर्नमेंट ही करेगी, एक लॉ एंड ऑर्डर जो है, पुलिस पे तो खर्च गवर्नमेंट ही करेगी, एक जुडिशियल मैकेनिज्म होगा, उस पर भी सरकार ही खर्च करेगी। और उसने हेल्थ और एजुकेशन को भी माना था। जनरली कैपिटलिस्ट इकोनॉमीज में माना जाता है देयर मस्ट नॉट बी एनी गवर्नमेंट इंटरवेंशन। लेकिन ये क्षेत्र हैं जो उस डिबेट से बाहर हैं। ठीक है, आप ये डिबेट नहीं करते ना, जैसे कि डिफेंस पे कौन करे, सरकार को नहीं करना चाहिए, हालांकि उसमें हम बहुत प्राइवेटाइजेशन ला रहे हैं। लेकिन ये है कि हेल्थ और एजुकेशन को और लॉन्ग टर्म, जैसे कि मैंने उस दिन बताया, कुछ स्टूडेंट्स को बुरा लगा कि ऐसा लगा कि जैसे मैं गवर्नमेंट को क्रिटिसाइज़ कर रहा हूँ। तो किसी ने कहा कि नहीं, पिछले साल तो अच्छा था, हेल्थ पे बजट पिछले साल अच्छा था, इस साल कम हुआ है, उससे काम नहीं चलेगा। एक लॉन्ग टर्म जब तक ग्रैंड स्ट्रेटेजी और विज़न नहीं होगा, हेल्थ को आप डेवलप नहीं कर सकते। वो ऐसा सेक्टर नहीं है जिससे आप पैसा निकाल लो या कम कर दो। ये है आंसर। यस प्लीज़, कोई सब एक एक क्वेश्चन पूछो जल्दी जल्दी, मुझे भी जाना है। हाँ, ये क्वेश्चन आप थे क्या वहाँ पर? अच्छा अच्छा, मुझे चेहरा याद नहीं। तो आपसे जब क्वेश्चन पूछा गया कि जब से इंडिपेंडेंस, आफ्टर इंडिपेंडेंस की किस तरह से जो है टैक्स बढ़े हैं और किस तरह से टैक्स घटे हैं, ठीक है, तो आप बजट डॉक्यूमेंट में जाएंगे तो उसमें आप पाएंगे टेंडेंसी कि सरकार का पैसों का कहाँ से आ रही है। ठीक है, तो आप उसमें देखेंगे तो इसमें ईयरली फ्लक्चुएशंस होता है, कभी वो आगे निकल जाता है, कभी इवन विद इन डायरेक्ट टैक्स, कभी कॉरपोरेट आगे निकल जाएगा, तो कभी, है ना, एक पीरियड ऐसा था कि सर्विस पे बहुत टैक्स आने लगा था, आईटी बूम और ये वो, तो उसकी कोई वो नहीं है। लेकिन इनडायरेक्ट टैक्स जो है धीरे धीरे उसको कैच कर रहा है। तो ये आपको क्लियरली, वहाँ बहुत सिंपल उन्होंने क्वेश्चन पूछा था ये, है ना। उन्होंने पूछा सर्विस सेक्टर टैक्स कब से आया, इसका भी आपने शायद जवाब नहीं दिया था। कब से आया होगा सर्विस सेक्टर में टैक्स? हाँ हाँ, जब से सर्विस सेक्टर में बूम आया, जब इसकी इम्पोर्टेंस बढ़ी, जब आईटी ये सारी चीज़ें आई, तभी तो इसके टैक्स ने ग्रोथ पकड़ी। उसके पहले इसके टैक्स का कोई बहुत नेग्लिजिबल था, ये बहुत इस तरह से था। जब इस सेक्टर ने ग्रोथ पकड़ी तभी तो इस पर टैक्सेशन के कलेक्शन ने ग्रोथ पकड़ी। जब ये सेक्टर ही बहुत छोटा था तो इससे टैक्स भी बहुत कम आता था। ये बहुत सिंपल क्वेश्चन उन्होंने आपसे पूछा था कि सर्विस सेक्टर के टैक्स की ग्रोथ के बारे में। तो आपको सीधे बताना था कि इकोनॉमिक रिफॉर्म्स के बाद जब ये आईटी बूम और ये सारी चीज़ें हुई तो इस पर टैक्स बढ़ा। और कोई क्वेश्चन? एक क्वेश्चन और आपसे पूछा था उन्होंने, कोई ट्रिकी, क्योंकि वो जीएसटी में ही है जो क्वेश्चन पूछा था उन्होंने। मैंने शायद अभी अपनी डिस्कशन में बताया, अभी भूल गया मैं। कोई ये फेडरल स्ट्रक्चर वाला, कि जीएसटी से फेडरल स्ट्रक्चर, आपसे या किसी और से पूछा था? ये उन्होंने ही किसी से पूछा था, वो बता नहीं पाई थी, वो भी बच्ची बता नहीं पाई थी। चलिए और पूछिए। क्या? अच्छा, एक छोटी सी पहले चीज़ मैं क्लेरिफाई कर दूं, मैं खुद एमजी नरेगा का बहुत बड़ा सपोर्टर हूं, ठीक है। और हमारी तो ये डिमांड है कि अर्बन में भी जो है अर्बन गारंटी एम्प्लॉयमेंट प्रोग्राम लाया जाए। काफ़ी इकोनॉमिस्ट्स जो है वो डिमांड कर रहे हैं, हम भी उन्हीं से सीखते हैं, पढ़ते हैं। तो इंटरव्यूज़ के दौरान मैंने एक क्वेश्चन नेगेटिव सेंस में पूछा कि इसको बंद कर देना चाहिए। उसका ये मतलब नहीं कि बंद कर, वो आपको एक डिफ़िकल्ट सिचुएशन में डालने के लिए पूछा। सीएजी की रिपोर्ट का मैंने, क्यों? मध्य प्रदेश में इसको सबसे ज़्यादा सक्सेसफुल होना था, क्यों? नहीं, क्योंकि मध्य प्रदेश में पंचायत राज सबसे ज़्यादा सक्सेसफुल है। टाइमली इलेक्शंस की अगर बात की जाए, विदाउट वायलेंस के इलेक्शन की अगर बात की जाए, एक फेयर इलेक्शन, टाइमली इलेक्शन भी बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट है। और सबसे पहले मध्य प्रदेश में आया, पंचायत राज जो है मध्य प्रदेश में सबसे पहले आया। तो यहाँ तो पंचायत राज बहुत सक्सेसफुल रहा। अगर पंचायत राज सक्सेसफुल है तो एमजी नरेगा की इम्प्लीमेंटेशन अथॉरिटी कौन है? पंचायती राज है। तो जब पंचायती राज आपका सक्सेसफुल है तो एमजी नरेगा क्यों नहीं? यहाँ इतना मिसयूज क्यों है? जैसे कि मैंने एक रिपोर्ट दी थी, शायद वो फिगर ऊपर नीचे हो सकता है, लेकिन CAG की रिपोर्ट है कि मध्य प्रदेश में उसका जो है इम्प्लीमेंटेशन सबसे ज़्यादा लीकेज वाले राज्यों में मध्य प्रदेश है। ठीक है, तो ये सारे क्वेश्चंस आप लोग तलाशो।